Hi everyone, this is Crystal. As many of you may know me from Megan's channel, Synchronic Saturdays, our podcast. So today I'm going to be talking about extroverted feeling and extroverted thinking and kind of what I've, learned from observing FJs and TJs. It's Megan's birthday weekend, so I decided to give her a small break by leveraging some of my own ideas on this channel in place of our typical conversations episodes. But I figured since a lot of you have been requesting I make more videos, that you would still get something out of this one. I would say one of the first questions I feel like a lot of people always have when they start watching me is people can tell I'm an ENFP from how I interact with Megan, but they can't necessarily understand how, my introverted thinking, as some people say, is so good as to be able to share what I think, not get fazed if people ask me about it, and just, not seem super necessarily feely. And for me, I think it came down to, I have an FI desire to, get to know these functions. Part of my story and why I have never, thought of myself as anything but an ENFP was because when I looked at, I first, heard about the, Myers-Briggs 16 personalities test. When I took it, I got ENFP, I didn't really think much of it, and then Megan mentioned you might be mistyped, because people can be, and to look at these Jungian functions more. So I looked at them, but what I looked at first was what I didn't have, as opposed to look at what I did have. And when I read the descriptions, the first thing I knew for certain was that I did not have any introverted thinking. I looked at that and I was like, that's what I've been lacking my whole life. Every single time my ISFJ mob got on me, it was because I don't have this inherent instinctive idea of how to judge something very subjectively. So knowing that that was one of my weakest, I automatically could then deduce I was probably an FP. And from there, it was just a matter of, do I use NE or SE? So then I look at the descriptions and I'm like, I definitely don't use extroverted sensing because I'm horribly slow on my feet. And I also felt like I care more about exploring possibilities than reflecting on my own feelings, because that shit's really painful. And I'd imagine that if INFP, if that's your dominant function as FI, that I wouldn't, view it as so hard. I kind of knew myself and what I trained myself on and what I naturally struggled with. So based on that, I knew with more certainty what I didn't have than what I had, which almost to me seems like NE in of itself. And that also kind of goes back to my philosophy of when I type people through the typing application me and Megan now do, we type people based on their weaknesses and what they've had to learn to do, and we look at their origin story as opposed to what they might have taught themselves to do and enjoy doing. No matter how much I like thinking, I'm not a thinker. I've always known really humbly that I'm not good at something just because I want to be. Anyways, so that comes down to how it was always easy for me to also spot FJs and TJs as well, because FJs would be the people that would make me feel I associated as stomped on, versus TJs would be stoic but end up having hearts of gold. But I think as an FP, it's really easy to mistake your distaste for bad TE as your distaste for FJs overall. And for me, it came down to, I think I get along better with FJs now because I myself am more willing to be the person in the room with good boundaries and good TE. So I had to learn to recognize when I'm actually being a pushover and think I'm being an FJ when I'm not. It's funny because I had an FJ mother that I've never thought FJs were pushovers. I just thought they just strategically keep their bitchiness inside until it's too irrelevant or too late. So whenever I found out about the inner process of how they feel obligated to other people, I was like, well, that sounds like it would make sense, because if I spent all my time feeling obligated to other people. I'd probably explode once in a while too, and then be really naggy as well. Like, it's always come pretty naturally to me to understand the FJ, but to accept it, I think, requires some sort of introverted thinking. And that's really hard. I think that my biggest miscommunications with FJs have been because, like, I lack introverted thinking and they lack the extroverted thinking, and that's all our thinking is. In fact, on the contrary, I'd say me and TPs get along better because when I'm upset, I need space, like, desperately, but I will be very cold about demanding it. And most F users don't like how my tone will totally change from, like, happy, bubbly Crystal to, like, get the fuck away from me, or I'll, like, cut you, like, ice cold Crystal. But TPs are the kind of people where, because I don't use FI, I can use TE to be like, if you don't stop talking, there will be consequences. They will, like, be like, okay, I don't fucking get what your consequences are and why you're like this, but I'll, like, leave. They, like, understand that more. But with that being said, I would say I've learned to stick up for myself more and to actually try to fight for what I'm thinking through observing the FJ, because they can't ever drop things, in a sense, without compromising their own sort of TI understanding of the world. And to me, I drop things a lot at the cost of, I guess, understanding the world in a more complex way. And so I've never understood why someone can literally, like, I don't know, keep on fucking talking and just, like, asking for more and actually engage with it. Because my thinking isn't very foundational, so, like, when I'm arguing with you, I'm not, like, building my understanding. I'm just feeling more and more bad about myself. So, like, in a sense, I've never seen the point of even trying to, like, confront someone if they've upset me or pick a fight, because I'm probably going to get myself squashed for not being able to answer their very specific questions. And also because I'm always like, I need to go into a discussion like that knowing exactly what I want to change. I don't trust that simply talking about it or communicating my understanding is going to help me come to a decision. But just through FJs, I learned that even just the act of seeing someone's actual logical perspective rather than knowing it's there and giving it the benefit of the doubt the way FI does, it actually does wonders. I think that I could only have understood type and people in general better from the fact that I let myself pick fights now. I think a big reason FPs misunderstand FJs, which I'm not going to get into how FJs misunderstand FPs, because if all of you watched Meghan's video, she does a good job of, like, leveling this out. I think coming from my perspective, though, as someone to confirm that FPs do misunderstand FJs, like, I think that we don't see the point of, like, fighting so much for virtually, like, anything unless it's, like, I just know that I have stronger feelings of, like, someone, like, if someone purposefully hurts me, I'll know to snap, and if I see, like, bullying happening, I'll be like, hey, stop. But if I know someone doesn't mean to hurt me, but they're still hurting me, it's really hard for me to bring it up, because I know that I feel powerless when I don't mean to hurt someone, but I somehow do, and I don't think that talking about it has any merit or point. But FJs have brought up the idea that even if they don't mean it, letting them know, maybe they can be a little more aware. You never know when your next idea for fixing the problem could randomly pop up, so you gotta prepare for that. I think that only through looking at the FJ was I able to really understand my own triggered helplessness, because I always, like, look at how they fight for things and I wonder, does that actually fucking work? And that's really uncomfortable for me. I think FPs, we pick our battles very wisely, but sometimes at the cost of our own understanding. Like, be like, oh, they're just like that, is actually a huge cop-out, because for me, I've realized that if someone says, oh, someone's just like that, in an effort to, like, alleviate conflict, I want to know, okay, tell me what, like, that means. And if you can give me a complex PhD treatise into their psyche, and also take responsibility for how you're just like this, but also how you can get along and not get along, only then will I take that as valid. Because I think a lot of the time in society, we try to back out of having hard discussions at times by just telling ourselves what we want to, like, hear and accept. Like, yeah, like, he's just like that can come from two completely different energetic places. It can be like, oh, he's just like this sort of person that I haven't always understood, but now that I know he does these certain things, I know to deal with situations these ways or whatever. But all the time people say that before they even understand and have really resolved a fight with someone. The merit of trying to resolve fights over time with FJs has just helped me in my relationships with other types too, because I'll always now say maybe there's something about them that I'm not seeing or understand about their like personality. And I always pick my battle, but I don't really consciously do it. And now I have to ask myself, okay, my default is to not like want to like bring up something if someone doesn't seem to have a solution for how to change. But what if they do? And I have to ask myself, okay, like what does it look like for me to just let something annoying go versus to actually bring it up? And I actually have to make a consideration for what are the kinds of things that I will actually want to bring up that will make me have to grow from conflict. Because it does come down to you don't want to bring up conflict that doesn't have a TE solution as an FP. And often FJs don't do a good job of allowing themselves to accept any TE solutions you do have. But then what are their ideas? That's what I try to counter it with, because sometimes I'm like, it's a fucking waste of time to talk to an FJ who's going to be so stubborn because their TI is confused and they don't have enough TE to like see my point. But then being like, okay, so what's your solution then? They actually sometimes have good ideas. And it's not always like, oh, you're all the one doing it wrong. When you say that, they actually end up taking responsibility. I think that the idea of FI and TI having different sorts of responsibility is what I like about FJ and a TJ respectively, because one is really good at taking one sort of responsibility. So like a TJ, for example, won't let their emotions really impact other people very largely because they know that the emotional energy of things is limited for a lot of people. People's capacity to handle emotions is very limited, so I respect that because my capacity mirrors theirs and is very limited. On the other hand, though, FJs fight for the future that they want as optimists, and they always look for a sense of truth, because to me I think it's conflicting that like your emotional capacity can be so small, but people's like capacity for truth can also like be small. Like it's like, how do I say this? I think like if you don't have a lot of energy to emotionally give, some people don't have a lot of energy to like logically assume and such. So I think FJs and TJs, yin and yang, illustrate this concept differently. On the one hand, FJs can be pushy, and I used to think that I disliked that compared to TJs who weren't pushy. But now I realize that my biggest beef with TJs as of late is that they often don't fight, like, even when they should fight for you. Like, literally, a lot of my TJ love interests, just when push came to shove, just ended up ghosting me. After, like, promising that they, like, cared about me and, like, all these things, they just literally, like, decided one day to give up. I'm not saying that only TJs do this, but, like, for me, the specificity of how hypocritical it feels based on what you're feeling just rubs me the wrong way. Like, you know, you can do everything in excess. Like, everything needs moderation. But to me, FJs, even when they fight too much and pressure me, sometimes it ends up good because they force-feed understanding of them in a way that I needed. And that will broadly apply to other people, too. And I appreciate that. TJs, on the other hand, it's good that they don't fight with me, but sometimes when I need an answer as to what they want, they are too scared to speak up. And I feel like some TJs watching this won't quite know what I'm talking about, because, like, maybe in the workplace you speak up. But I think that with emotional relationships, when you're afraid of, like, someone not taking your idea seriously, you'll give up too easily without making it flexible, without being like, okay, fine, you don't like that idea, what's a better one? Let's work this out. Like, the patience for the emotional process of trying to come to two answers is something a TJ will just, like, duck out of. And what, like, the thing is, as advocates for each of these points of view, I'm a P who needs it, because I kind of flip-flop between, I guess, using, like, my conscious TE to, like, logically work things out and meet deadlines in my career, versus I'm not that great at FE, but I react more strongly to FE I need to figure out how to like emotionally compromise too. At all times, I'm learning from both just by thinking about how they've done things and in which scenario like I can use one source of wisdom. But yeah, like my huge philosophy is that P's and J's are so different. Oh my god, like they operate off completely different sorts of cognition. Like even if you have the same cognitive functions as like a J or P counterpart, you're going to just look at life so differently. I think a big reason J's have annoyed me in the past is because like they'll be good at like FE or TE, but they won't be good at the other one, and they can't. And I will always be picking between the two. Like sometimes I want to fight, sometimes I don't want to fight. That's not going to be constant for me. And they like don't really know how to mold. So at any given point, I'll be like, I need to go bitch to the FJ about the TJ, or the bitch to the TJ about the FJ. But they both are, I guess, ways to, I guess, tangibly measure an impact you may have. And I know that we talked about how TE likes to quantify things more, but with FE and how it uses qualitative data, that's also a way to measure or to gauge the validity of something. And data in general can be very overstimulating for me because I don't organize it automatically with TE or FE. But I've at least learned that to have faith in that there is organization possible either way through TJs and FJs. I think that most FPs, or most Ps honestly, just don't understand what it's like to like only literally be one way when it comes to how you live your life. In that, in a sense, we think they're consistent because we see their FI and TI seems inconsistent, but what their FE and TE value for like the external world is always the same, but we don't look at that TE, FE consistently. So it's hard for us to see the other person as totally consistent when it comes to J's and P's. If anything, I've had like way less conflict with P's, even TP's, because even when they're annoying me, I still see where they're coming from always and can logically extrapolate how they're going to react more than like an FJ who I don't know at any point if I've like dropped the ball on like valuing FE and if they're going to be mad at me or something, which made growing up with an FJ mom really hard. But yeah, like the important thing is to humbly realize that you're not probably as curious as you think you are, especially as a P. I think that a lot of us underestimate how much our demons, our judging demons, affect us because FI and TI is so personal and so easily hurt and influenced. So I think that when FJs and TJs can come in and kind of like, you know, snowball over, or not, or just bulldoze over like what we feel and what we think and what we want, it's really hard for us to use our voices in those times. And I think that's where, you know, FJs get a lot of flack because they assume everyone can be using their voice, even IFJs, and I just found that I have a lot of trouble with that. But at the end of the day, like philosophizing about what's going on with them and what their motivations are, even if you don't quite hit the nail on the head every time, is the only way to get better. And for me, I've just had the privilege of like me and Meghan, even though we're ENFP, ENFJ, and so different, we've had the same vision and goals for how we want to interact with people and how we want to show up for our relationships. And that inherent respect for humanity in general and improving the lives of everyone around us, regardless of who that is, I think us having that value in common is why we talked through every fight. For me, I always had the like idea that one day I could be coaching people or helping people with this kind of thing. So of course I'm going to have to hear her out because I just refuse to believe that there are just some people that are just that difficult and narcissistic. Because FJs looking like kind of FI users will come off that way. And then once I understood her, it became easier for me to look around and like see how FE pops up everywhere. So now, you know, I have plenty of FJs in my life now. One of my best friends in LA is an INFJ. My roommate's an ISFJ. My mom is an ISFJ. My sister is an ESFJ. Meghan, like, all of them, and also just even my ENTP friend, I can see now how when I'm, like, doing something that apparently triggers one of them, chances are there's, like, some kind of TI origin behind that mentality that's influencing everyone else, too. And I don't always notice how my blind spot affects people, but I think FJs, they'll notice a drop in my enthusiasm, and like they're not taking it personally like FI, oh, you don't care about me. It's more like, what in your life is making you just less excited about things? Because you just seem sad all the time, and it's like TI sad. It's like I'm just like low energy as opposed to like something is consciously wrong. And I used to be like, you're crazy, but now I'm like, no, they're probably actually reacting to something real, because I would look around and be like, do other FE users think that way about me right now? And they'd be like, yeah. I'm like, okay. So I've learned to take seriously that there is work to do other than just on, does my FI understand what's going on with me right now? It's more like my TI, like how's my worldview being affected? How is that affecting other people? Blah, blah, blah. And on the other hand, I also realize that not knowing what my TI is doing at times affects TJs too. Like with romantic interests, like guys, I think sometimes if my TI was looking for like a power trip with a TJ and didn't really notice it, because I'd be like, oh my god, like, you're this TJ dude, and like, I'm the only girl that gives you attention and makes you feel understood, and of course you'd worship me, right? They can actually see maybe that I unconsciously am like kind of like treating them like that and be annoyed by it. And I used to be like in denial of this, but then I would like start noticing like them get randomly annoyed by me faster, or like randomly be triggered, and it was like happening over multiple years with multiple different guys. And I noticed that the more I improved my ability to communicate and want to resolve conflict with like FJs, the more I actually found it easier to come off consistently, apparently, to TJs who would stop acting randomly salty with me. Yeah, and like, I think I've just kind of learned that like I come off differently than I think, and I come off more inconsistently from moment to moment than I think, but the only way to make that consistent isn't to focus on how I'm coming off, but to focus on what I'm feeling and reacting to. So now I can tell when I'm in a bad mood, in a TI bad mood, because I'm just like feeling particularly down about the world that day, as opposed to because like something bad's actually going on. And yeah, this goes back to like, I can only have learned that from like observing the J's in my life, as opposed to TPs always seem to a degree to have TI that's inaccessible to me, because I'm like, I just don't have the energy to bitch about literally everything and to be mad about literally everything. But what they do have the energy to do is set certain constraints and boundaries for understanding what kinds of actions, behaviors, things about the world they don't like and are going to get them down. So even like if no one's mean to them, or they don't see a sad video on the news, they will still, if they're in a bad mood, kind of assume it's just coming from like a more general place. And yeah, like, anyways, with Synchronic Saturdays, the reason why I don't really post videos on my own, even though people really like my insight, is because it's so much energy to put myself out there. I don't think it's an ENFP thing, it's just a me thing. And through Megan's convincing, I have learned to, I guess, value my own TI and SE enough to like feel like I have something worth saying. And that came down to also communicating during fights, even if it's not going to get me a certain TE result of someone changing, I will still make an effort to like go and put myself out there, and that applies to this, I guess, YouTube endeavor as well. One of our first podcasts was called Theme of the Week, and we did it in college 3 years ago now, and God, like, I would just freeze up and act awkward and like not really know how to be myself. That would piss off Megan, and I'd be pissed that she was pissed, because I'd be like, you're trying to change me, blah, blah, blah. But she was more like, no, I know that you're bad at this, but, you know, you can't just give up on becoming your best self, which goes back to FJs won't stop fighting, but they also won't stop fighting for themselves and self-improvement in a way that I feel like I can drop the ball on. I'll be like, this is too hard, this is too triggering. That is a bad thing. I need to, like, not, but then it's kind of like, okay, if I keep avoiding it, how am I ever going to improve? I understand that more now, and I understand that I always have the option of not pushing myself, but if I have even a little bit of energy, I might as well push myself a little bit. So yeah, habit formation and just communication and just general things are things I've learned from the FJ and TJ, and I guess, like, applying this to a more general broad sense is I think that FPs, when you haven't gotten to know an FJs intimately, perhaps as you think, if you've never fought with your FJ loved ones as an FP, you probably don't understand them. Like, you probably, other than them just getting mad at you, you know, like, but if you have not genuinely gotten into, like, a fighting, screaming match where you say, like, the meanest things you could, and then you guys work through it and figure out how the other works, you don't understand how they really are. Because what I've noticed is it's a push and pull between, like, with FP and FJ conflict, one person always has to back down. Either the FJ has to accept the FP can come off really selfish, or the FP has to come off that the FJ can come off really needy. And they don't understand the cognition behind that, and they just go on with their lives kind of slightly resenting the other person, but being like, I'm going to keep the friendship and the peace. But for me, I was willing multiple times throughout my friendship with Meghan over the last 5 years to not be her friend anymore and to see if I still wanted to be. And if I wanted to be, was that because I had an ego need to feel like a good person, or was that because I genuinely felt like there's still something here that I need to understand, not just for me, but for maybe understanding other people too. And so what I implore for people, if they want to understand other people, is you gotta fucking fight with them. Because you, like, I get along magically with other FPs, but even then, ever since I got more into, like, you know, understanding the goodness of FJ's will to fight, I've picked fights with a few FP friends when I feel like, and I can feel them negatively affecting me when they flake on me, and I can tell it's for some bullshit reason, which sounds like a total FJ move, right? But, like, for me, I'll be like, hey, like, I know you have a lot going on, and be able to qualify it nicely with, like, a little more TE than an FJ might. But I'll be like, but it's not okay with me that you are flaking with me and you're, like, bad at managing your time. Hang out with me. And I'll be like, but I struggle with this too, so I'm not judging you that hard, but you need to acknowledge that you made an impact on me. And they'll be like, oh, okay. And it's like, in general, only through seeing how people handle conflict have I been able to see how I handle conflict too and been a better person. I'm not saying, like, go out and pick a fight with someone that, like, you know, you're doing okay with and just start making yourself super grumpy if you're not that kind of person. But if you feel slighted and you can come at it from a constructive standpoint, you can really teach your loved one how you work, give them a handbook, and this goes for any relationship. I think that a lot of times also learning to spot problems in advance before they become a big deal is important, because if I'm in the heat of the moment and I'm like, shut the fuck up to, like, any FJ, TJ, whoever, it's gonna, like, you know, not land well. But if I'm like, I've noticed a pattern, I'll, like, call it out, but also be willing to, like, stand up for myself and anticipate that people are probably not gonna understand it right off the bat. Like, for me, I think the main thing is, like, I react badly to condescension, and FPs don't really do this, but every other type does. And I'll be like, hey, like, when you say things like this, it makes me feel condescended to. And then even if they're like, that's dumb, I'll be like, well, why do you think it's dumb? They'll be like, because you should have more confidence. I'm like, why should I have more confidence? Like, it's kind of not backing down from the fact that, okay, well, I'm insecure about that. Like, you stop, like, and then they'll be like, oh, well, you should have confidence because you're great, and here's why, da da da. I'm like, okay, see, it went from, well, you shouldn't be mad about that, but I am, or whatever, it became, like, more like, oh, I just believe in you so much that it's just absurd that you wouldn't think that way. It's like, well, now it's been revealed that I, in fact, don't think this, like, way highly about myself or something. And now we get to talk about how to avoid this in general and stuff. And hopefully not have this fight again. You have to literally just, like, scuba dive until the answer makes sense to you and not back down just because it hurts. And yeah, like, FJs are always way nicer and have seen way more things about you than you realize. There are things that they don't see that, you know, you'll probably assume they don't see, but you also incorrectly maybe assume they don't see things about you that they do see. And the only way to account for all variables is to frickin' talk to them. And also, I would say the same with TJs, like, they don't seem to understand you and they don't want to, frickin', like, strong-arm them into it. Like, I think that all types could use an ability to back down from conflict and to acknowledge conflict. And I think that you won't know until you try it both ways and aren't afraid to fail. I know what my weaknesses with communicating are, and I think that everyone I respect in the YouTube comments who acknowledges their weaknesses is also on the road to getting better relationships. through their understanding of cognition. And yeah, like I think that at the end of the day, my philosophy is I'm not trying to propagate the idea of like an objective system, because to me, like typing people, okay, like whatever, maybe that person isn't even a freaking like TJ or whoever I type them as. All I know when I'm typing someone is that they're using certain functions, because I've trained myself to identify the functions more readily than what it means about the person using them. Like maybe they're using role TE, maybe they're using third function TE, maybe they aren't even a TE user, maybe, but like what I've learned is I need to have more confidence in what that function is, and that regardless of who the person using it is, how I'm going to respond to it. So like, like if I see someone using TE, if I don't know their P or J, I don't let myself freak out about it. I just respond as if my understanding of how TE communicates best, if it works, great. If it doesn't, then I'm going to try another method. Maybe they're actually a TI user who's just using like what looks like TE. Okay, great, next one. Or maybe, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's only so many, like, permutations of what that person could be using, but you gotta have a strategy for each that's tested against all the people in your life, which is why, for me, I feel like I have more confidence in my strategies because I've studied what each type can look like so closely, and, like, whittled it down to, okay, if this person's, like, a stereotype textbook ENFJ, what does their FE look like? What does that mean? FE could look like objectively. Okay, that person I suspect could be an unconventional ISFJ. Okay, did they have FE? Like, you know what I mean? It's like constantly hypothesizing and trial and error, like check and guessing is what I've been doing for like 5 years, which is how I type people. But it comes down to I don't even care anymore if I've typed someone correctly, because if I just know how to communicate with them, whether that's with what I think is TE or FE or whatever, I'll have benefited. And to me, this is only a tool to improve your relationships in a subjective sense and understanding of people in a human objective sense. Because without that, we won't be able to really get down and gritty with it. And see, people are going to listen to this and be like, see, look, FI can be really sweet and nice and build bridges too. And I'm like, but I don't build bridges the way FE does. Like, I've trained myself to learn to give a shit about, like, connecting even when my own emotions are compromised. You see the end result of, like, a lot of FPs, and you go, oh, that must be FE, but you don't know anything about them. Or you go, oh, like, I see this person doing this thing, that must be FE, when you don't know their process. For me, the only reason I've learned to type people correctly is because I shortcut knowing what their process must be through just so many deep, intense conversations I have had with people. So, yeah, like, I would say FE accounts for gaps in the world and human understanding that, TE can't, and vice versa. Like, I understand boundaries better than I think a lot of FE users do, who have to cognitively get their T out of that point. So it's always, I've never been called pushy, even though I'm afraid of that. I've never been called pushy. I've always been called genuinely good at giving people space and not shaming them, because I just believe so much in boundaries and your own experience. And that is useful in some instances. And in some instances, I don't fight enough. I give up too easily, and I get really triggered and become judgmental based off my trigger, which is different than just if you're triggered and seeming angry as an F user. But for me, my anger stews deep down and creates a lot of resentment and ugliness. But yeah, like in general, I would say I could probably talk for a lot longer about this. But I think, yeah, like a lot of times when people are like, I don't understand what you're getting at here, like, I'm reacting to just the idea that, like, FJs and TJs, because they don't have both extroverted functions, judging functions, they will always limitedly express a part of them, especially to a P, who can flip-flop between both and be like, hello. And I think having to be the person who has the patience to, like, push past my own extreme intense triggers and just see the person from both sides of the coin, whether it's a TJ who, has poor FE but needs to just be given the benefit of the doubt they're a good person, or if it's an FJ who has to be given the benefit of the doubt that they are making sense, even if they can't explain it, you end up benefiting. So, yeah, I'm just gonna stop it here for now, but yeah, feel free to comment below. I'm checking the comments on this video. And yeah, I'll hopefully be posting more on Meghan's channel in the upcoming weeks, so look for that. Thank you.